In tonight, let's go ahead. We still don't have the combs yet. We usually have to wait for him so he can pray, but that's okay. Reverend Gomez, will you pray, please, for the Bible study?
Dear Lord, we're thankful again for this opportunity to be here in your house, to listen to the teaching of your word. We pray that you would help us to turn our focus to life eternal. Just receive the words, God. Take it slow and easy and digest the things that are taught tonight, that we might take them and apply them to our life. We pray we ask this in Jesus' name.
Amen. You made it slow or shut the door there, maybe. I'm talking about hearing the voice of God still, and this is in the sense, and we're in this dark world that we live in, and we'll talk about that dark world in just a little bit. But let's read those verses. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Now, we delved into those last week. Let's move into 14. Do all things without murmurings and disputings, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. Yea, and if I be offered upon the sacrifice and service of your faith, I joy and rejoice with you all. For the same cause also do ye joy and rejoice with me. So we're still talking about that joy of the Lord, as the theme throughout this book is, and how that in whatever situation is, there is much joy. But we want to talk about light, as that we are to shine as lights in this world. There was a small child that was taken to a cathedral, and she was watching the sunshine through the windows. And she asked her mother, "What are these people on the windows?" "They are saints," was the answer. Then the child said, "Now I know what saints are. They are people who let the light shine through." And so that is really key, is letting the light shine through us and to others. And so we're teaching about shining our light. You and I are called to be light bearers, to shine our light. In days gone by, lighting was even more significant. You know, now we have all the modern day conveniences of lighting. They didn't have where you just go over and we complain if the light doesn't work or if a bulb goes out. But, you know, we just go over and flip the switch, and we have generators and we have electricity and we have all. But back in the day, I don't remember it. It was before my time, but I know I read books about it. Little House on the Prairie and all that stuff, right? How they had candles and they had the oil lamps and all of these things, to where that, when the sun went down, they went to bed. They got up early when they went by the sun more than now we dictate it more because we have modern day conveniences. But their lives were dictated by how the sun went up and sun went down. So when it went down, they went to bed a lot earlier, especially when it was cold outside. They didn't have all the modern furnaces and all that. It was warmer when they went to bed, climbed into the blankets and all that good stuff. But we have all of the lighting and all that goes on. But and it wasn't only just, in your house, but that was in your traveling. We have car headlights. Even in the early cars, they didn't put headlights on right away. They put them on as they progressed, as they were made. Or they didn't have headlights on their camels or on their donkeys back then, so it would have been very difficult. Even travel by boat was minimized unless you could see the stars or there was a lighthouse. So there was even limited on the sea. Work ceased unless you could come up with some way or some source of light. And so I have some there on your outline, some uses of light in our life. And one note I put on here, and I think it's even listed further down, but research shows that vitamin D deficiencies in men caused by not enough sunlight made them twice as likely to develop heart disease. If you're not careful, a lack of sunlight can actually lead to a form of clinical depression. The less sunlight we see in the winter months, the more likely we are to develop seasonal affective disorder, SAD. It's a pretty good acronym, right? Because you're depressed and so therefore you are sad. And I think I've read articles about that, about people that are living in Alaska, North Pole, North perimeter area, to where it's doesn't get light, but only for about a half hour through the day, every day. So it's dark all the time through the winter months, and people are overwhelmed by depression because the sun doesn't come up. So they call that SAD, seasonal affective disorder. But we'll just go through this real quick. I'm not going to dwell on this, and you can read that. I may only just read the first part, and you can read the rest. But just some uses of light. Food is essential for the light. Photosynthesis is a concept in biology wherein food is synthesized by the use of light. Light is the sole source of food generation for all living organisms on the earth. And you can read the rest of that. Vitamin D synthesis, we already read about that a bit. Just some good information, but I want to take the time further on down. Vision. All animals, birds, are able to see the objects around them due to presence of eyes. But without light, these eyes might be of no use. Because of light, the eyes can receive the image of the objects and send the information to the brain. From this visual information, we comprehend the objects. Hence, we can notice that in darkness, we could see nothing. So light makes us able to see the objects around us. We use the light to enable our vision. Something I heard something, or maybe I was listening to something. They were talking about babies' vision. And I never heard this before, but they said that the babies see upside down for the first few days or weeks until their brain flips it around the other way. So I was like, what? Really? Okay. How do you prove that? That was my question. How do you prove that? That sounds cool. And they're like, you can wow people with it. But I mean, how did you prove that they see upside down? Anyway, colors. The whole world looks beautiful due to colors. But in darkness, we see no colors. This is because all the colors in the world are possible only due to light. And we saw a double rainbow on the way in, right? What did it mean? What does it mean? The light has many spectra. Each spectra has a color, and these are broadly referred to as big. I don't know if you can say that, big yor. I don't know if that, it's an acronym that you can't really pronounce, right? You have big yor. In the full form, it is violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. I'm glad you have it in front of you, because for me trying to explain that would have been interesting, right? But all of these colors have different wavelengths and frequencies. And when light falls on an object, it absorbs some spectra and reflects others. The reflected light falls onto our eyeball and passes the impression to the brain, making it look colorful. So we have that, the maintenance of temperature. Light is a form of energy, and sunlight has a huge energy by which temperature on the earth is maintained. So, also our body clock, right? Some of us have a body clock that works, and some of it's out of whack, right? And so, many times I don't really use an alarm. It's been that way through the years, and you kind of get set to a pattern as it's best for your body to stay consistent. And it's still, I don't know, sometimes it's the sunlight, depending on, we're in the basement, so we don't get the influence of that, but you want to make sure that you have what they call here the circadian rhythm. The rhythm of your body. Everyday light keeps plants and animals ticking with time. There's a clock inside both plants and animals which keep them active during the day and relaxed at night. This clock is controlled by light. And also, the plants grow in the direction of light, as auxin in a plant growth hormone is regulated by light. How many have watched or seen a whole field of sunflowers? You can see that. They even had some at the store out there today, but you can just see the whole field of sunflowers turning with the sun. What are we pointing at? One right there? The plants right there will turn. Really? In here they'll turn? They're leaning towards that sun, but they're not turning with the whole. When you watch a whole field of sunflowers in the morning, I don't know what they do during the night, and all of a sudden they're kind of like sneaking. They're kind of sneaking. They're sneaking over to the east, and then, whoop, there it is, and then they wake up and they go all the way. And you'll watch the whole, it's a beautiful thing. Drying and evaporation. Sunlight helps in the drying of the soil, forests, air and rocky surfaces due to ability to heat up. Also, it helps water evaporate from oceans and water ponds. This drying is helpful in two ways. We have the water cycle. I'll leave that to you guys. We're not going to read that. But one that's kind of interesting is sterilization. Light especially is ultraviolet. Its ultraviolet component is an excellent sterilizing agent. Haven't you noticed in a supermarket or hospital the use of UV lamps? These UV lamps are good sterilizers. The UV rays kill the microbes in the air, keeping the air sterile. So it's a cleansing agent. The sun or the light is a cleansing agent. And then solar energy, of course, we are familiar with that. Moving on. Physical light has its definite benefits, but spiritual light has even greater benefits. And so we can look at how significant that the physical light is and put it on to how significant or how important spiritual light is. And most all of us, I believe, understand that we were in darkness, but now we walk in the light of life. And so we want to focus on letting our light shine. Daniel chapter 12, verse 3, and they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. Bible tells us over and over about persuading men, letting our light shine. Provoke each one another in love. So there's a persuasive influence. We have to put it out there, trying to persuade others to turn to the Lord. So in this, we have the first four, or we have the 4 points there. How dark is the world, or looking at the darkness of the world, and that's our first section there. And the condition of our world. And you don't want to dwell on it too long, but you want to understand it. Verse 14 says, "Do all things without murmuring and disputing, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world." The world's watching Christians. They're looking all the time. And all you have to do is make a mistake and you'll find out that they're watching. They could say nothing to you forever, but you make a mistake and they are, especially whatever work environment you have where they're jaw-jacking and flapping their lips at one another, or putting stuff out on Facebook or social media or whatever. But if you make a mistake, they'll be quick to point that out. And that helps you to understand they're paying attention. And so, okay, that's fine. I'll keep my nose clean. I'll do what I need to do. But you're paying attention. And so when they need something, when they need somebody to pray, when they have a need in their family, when a child's sick, when he's all these things, get the pastor. Can you guys pray at your church? Yeah, we can do that. And you should come. And you can pray at the church too. But the world's watching, and we shouldn't blend in, but stand out. You're a standout individual, right? Peculiar people. But in our day and age, many times people blend in because there's not a lot of difference between Christians, or however you want to call it, and the world. There really is a difference. But the way people portray, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian. And wouldn't you like to be a Christian too? No, not like you. You can name the name of Christ. You can name the name, but if you're not living and you're not letting your light shine, there's no difference in your life than when before I got saved or after I got saved. Then why? Why get saved if there's no difference? But there is a difference. The light comes in, and you change. So Christians shine in a number of ways. Because there's different types of lights. Some are pleasant, and some are not so pleasant. The beauty of sunshine with its benefits, it can shine brightly, it warms, it's beautiful, it allows all these things that we talked about. plants to grow, photosynthesis, all these different things take place. But it can also be very overbearing, and it can make you sweat. Some folks are coming, I'm sweating a little bit today. But it can absolutely, the same sun that can melt the clay or make the soil soft can heat it and bake it and make it hard. So it has both effects. Some people are like candles with a quiet glow that draws people, and it can be warming to, a candle can be a nice accent to a room and nice and quiet. Even the Bible speaks about, references our life as a candle, that, how we light a candle and we don't hide it under the bed. That's not a good thing. But sometimes a candle is kind of a wimp. That's old technology, right? Candle can only do so much. We even talk about a flashlight having so many candle power, and if it only had one candle power, you wouldn't want it. It doesn't have enough. But so it wants to be a little bit more effective than just a candle. Some people are like spotlights. They're like or the headlight on you have the headlight on your hard hat. It works good for you. You're looking at stuff, but then you're talking to somebody else with that headlight on. They're like, oh, hey, thank you so much. Can you turn that some other direction or turn it off? It's not good in that interaction. But, some people are kind of like those spotlights. They always like pointing out everybody's faults. They always like being the light. Hey, you're going to hell? You're going to die and go to hell? It's kind of like their approach is abrasive and overpowering. They're like the spotlight type of Christian. That's not always so good, but some are more like a flashlight, helping others out of the darkness, or leading others to the right path, or directing them, or saying, follow me as I follow Christ. But he's saying we are lights in the world. Just like there are many different lights, people also shine differently. But he said, do all things without complaining and disputing, or murmuring and disputing. We'll break those two words down. Many looked at Paul as being a great beacon of light, but now he is in prison. And so he writes a letter to the Philippian church, and they're worried. Christians in Philippi are worried about Paul. Paul's in prison. He's been arrested. That's how you get in prison, right? He's in jail. And we don't know what's going to happen to him, and they're confused by these circumstances. This man of God, miracles, God's working through him, all things are possible through Christ, and all of a sudden he's subject to the state, in prison, and where's this hope? Where's this glory? Where's all these things that are going on? And so they're kind of questioning all this, and Paul writes them a letter and says, first of all, we're partners in the gospel. It's all working together. God's got it all in control. I'm in prison here, but God has a purpose for me here in prison, and God has a purpose for you where you're at. And sometimes, people get taken, through this last month, different ones have gone on vacation, different ones have been sick, different ones have been here, and certain ones have not been here. But really it helps others to understand that, hey, somebody's not here, I need to step up. It helps to understand also, like, hold it, look at all they're doing when they're here. And so it kind of makes an awareness that the body has to it has to work together. And those that step up or step down or turn, whatever happens, different ones just fill in the gap, right? Amen. Okay, I'll say amen. Anyway. So he says, I'm in jail, you're not. You're doing your thing, I'm doing mine. But he said, I want you to know that this circumstance has happened to me, has actually turned out for the furtherance of the gospel. And the gospel is going on. It's being furthered much more. He brings out in his letters the Roman guards, the Praetorian guards, the members of Caesar's household are hearing the truth. Circumstances have closed some doors, but others have been opened. Sometimes we look at things and like, hold it, I was going this way, or I thought it should happen this way, and something shuts, something doesn't work out that way, and so it forces you to do something else. Sometimes jobs change, sometimes financial situations change, sometimes whatever. Opportunities when we're soul winning. Well, we can't go here. Well, maybe I have to go over here tonight. And you're like, oh, wow, if we would have went over there, I wouldn't have got to meet this fella, or I wouldn't have got to meet this lady. You just have to like, well, oh no. You can't dwell if some door doesn't open. You can't dwell on that and walk around with your lip hanging down. You have to go forward with the opportunities, like looking for the situation. Say, hold it, there must be another door that's opening up here, and I'm not going to have the wrong attitude. I'm going to look and follow the leading of God. So, circumstances. So he's saying, I want to be humble. I want you to be loving. I want you to serve each other. And the greatest example that we already covered is that Jesus himself humbled himself, left heaven, came to earth, took on himself a human body, and he humbled himself to the point of death. God exalted him, and kind of referring back to our last Bible study, we have the mind of Christ. And that's where we've come to. So he said, why be like Christ? Why have the mind of Christ? And it ties in with what we're talking about tonight, because the world's watching. Everybody's taking a look and seeing what's going on in the church and each individual. They watch our lives, and they want to know everybody wants that difference. They want to know, or they want to understand. You know, they see people with confidence. They see people that aren't going around wringing their hands and fearful and unbelieving. And they just, you know, all of the pandemics going on and all of the things are happening. And they still have a loving confidence. And we'll get into some of these circumstances that can be overwhelming. But our attitude in the circumstances is our testimony. Not saying that bad things don't happen to us, but what do we do, or how do we react or act when the bad things do come? That's what the testimony is, and I'll bring out one if we have time. And there's plenty others that could probably say the same thing. But the world's watching. Be different enough that they appreciate the difference, but don't be weird anyway, right? Okay. It leads them out of darkness when you shine as a light. And I've shared this illustration, and I'll share it again because it really does bring the point home. It's been a year or two since I brought it up, but there was a man driving his car, and a woman was driving behind him in another vehicle. They were at a stoplight, and when the light turned green, the man in the lead car did not look up. He was looking down, maybe at his phone, but he didn't go. It's green, but he didn't go. Everyday Colorado. I don't know what it is. I'm telling you, I should have a bumper sticker. If you're in the front of the line at a light, you have the obligation to pay attention. Get off the phone. Anyway, and you can't say it too loud because we've all been guilty at one time or another. But anyway, the one that gets me, is that people don't honk. The lady in the car behind him did see it, and she let him know that she saw it by honking the horn, which is fine. She honked her horn more and more and more, but the guy in the lead didn't budge. He didn't move. He didn't look up. She honked again. She's getting a little mad at this time, rolled down her window and yelled. Nothing happened, but just when the light turned yellow, right before it turned red, he took off. He noticed it and took off, zoomed through the intersection, leaving the woman to go through the whole nother light cycle. She's fuming. She's got her window down. She's waving bad gestures at him. She yells some choice words, ranting, raving, pounding the steering wheel. Just then, she notices a police officer with a gun pointed saying, "Ma'am, I want to see both your hands. I'm going to open the car door with keep your hands up. I want you to get out of the vehicle." So she gets out of the vehicle. The police puts her arms behind her, puts her in handcuffs, takes her to jail. She's in a cell for 2 hours. After 2 hours, that same police officer lets her out and says, "Ma'am, I'm very sorry for the misunderstanding, but you have to know that as I was listening to the words you were saying, and I was watching the gestures that you were making, and I was watching you ranting and raving and going through those contortions, I had also noticed on the back of your vehicle the 'What would Jesus do' sticker, and the little chrome fish that's on your trunk, and the thing around your license plate that said 'Follow me to Sunday school,' and naturally I assumed that your car had been stolen." The message on the back of the car was very different than the message that was coming from inside the car. So as the world is watching us, what are they naturally assuming? How do we let our light shine, and what does that mean? He said that we're living in a crooked and a perverse generation. Do you think those words describe the world that we live in? Of course they do. As you look around, would you say the world is crooked now, or is just as crooked as it was 2,000 years ago when this was written, or even more crooked than it was 2,000 years ago? Better or worse? It's still a crooked and perverse generation. In fact, the word crooked comes from the word scolios, where we get the word scoliosis, the medical condition of the bending of the spine, so that a person cannot support the weight that you were designed to support, because the support system is crooked. It's bent over and weak. And so by using the word that Paul is saying is that the world that we live in is morally bent, spiritually deformed, and unable to support the weight of life. A very strong word, a crooked world. Perverse, it means to twist and to turn. We live in a twisted, morally contorted world. And Jesus even said, "O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? How long shall I put up with you?" We need to view our world plainly. I think that's in there. Plainly, spiritually, and our world eternally. We have to look at it all these ways. And something about a just plain honest look at a condition of a situation or of our world, and just not looking at it through a skewed or colored lenses, just looking at it as it is, praying about it, kind of opens up your eyes. And I know we love to be informed, but it's difficult to discern what's truth and what's not anymore. I mean, it's hard to understand, because normally the flashiest, falsest headlines are the ones that get repeated. The false narratives, the crazy stuff that people just listen to the first few lines and they base their whole day off of it. Did you hear that? And you look at me like, did you read the rest of it? It didn't even mean that. That was just the grab. Don't you know that? Didn't you? I mean, I remember going through literature class. Yeah, you put the weirdo headline on there so people have to read the rest. That's what you're supposed to do. But to most of us, that's all we read anymore. We get the little headline on our phone, and so, did you hear this is what's happening? Did you hear that what's happening? No, it's not really that's what's happening. But some of it, you're like, no, it's crazier than what the headline says. And it's almost, I listen to certain things on news and all that, and I believe in fasting, and I believe that I fast from the news is one of the best fasts I do. It really is. Your day is much better. You can. I'll do much better just by reading and praying. I'll pray for it. That God, no matter how messed up and perverse and crooked it is, Lord, help it today, and then I won't even look at it. It'll be all right. I'll have a whole lot better day. But the sad part of it is that people get lured in, hooked in. They make all these decisions about what the world feeds them, and you're like, oh, I went and did this. I went and did that. I did that. I listened to this. And you're like, really? You did that? Why? That's not even biblical. Why did you just jump into that hook, line, and sinker? That's you took the bait. You took hook, line, and sinker, meaning that fish you were trying to catch out there, he took it all. Everything, swallowed it in, and you reeled him in. And sometimes that's what people do. They take the world's bait, take and swallow it in, and they're like the little fish, and the devil just reels them right in. This age of enlightenment and information's not sure that things are brighter, but they're probably darker. We're not being enlightened by all the information. Consider this: in the past century, the last 100 years, 123 million people have been killed in wars in just our last 100 years. That's more than any and all of the centuries that preceded the last century, according to the FBI. I don't know if we can rely on that either, but anyway, there's a murder every 35 minutes in our country, a rape every 6 minutes, a burglary every 14 seconds. That's the world that we live in. So that's a plain look at the world. However, we can look plainly, not just look plainly, but look spiritually. When Jesus looked at crowds, he looked at them differently. He knew that they were perverse. He knew that they had problems. He knew they were insecure. He knew that they had all of these issues. But it says when he saw the crowd, the multitude, he was moved with compassion for them. He didn't take the callousness. He didn't take the hard look. And just like, many times things come our way and we have a skewed look at the world and we miss this part. Because they were wearied and scattered like sheep having no shepherd. And here's the challenge. Let's start viewing people not as what we can get from them or as clients or certain things, not as potential business, but as eternal souls, eternally spiritual. And so we've got to view them plainly, spiritually, and that leads us to the third part. Third part is eternally. The truth is, those who are in that moral and spiritual darkness, if left unchecked and unchanged, there's eternal consequences. And that should charge us. That should remind us every day that we have to have compassion for the lost and dying world. No matter how that they treat us, no matter how that whatever is coming across the news, no matter what comments are made, we still need to pray for them. Jesus talked about outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's how we need to start viewing our world, having a vision for the lost, having a vision for the lost. And we could teach a whole couple Bible studies on soul winning and a vision for the lost, and maybe we'll put that on the list, but that'll propel us to soul win, not just in soul winning time, but all the time. Verse 15, we're talking about recognizing our position in this world, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. Among whom ye shine as lights in the world. The word here, lights, is typically in Scripture reserved for starlight. It's a beautiful, we've got some nice, out here we have some wonderful vistas of the sky. Last night it was beautiful. I took some pictures from out there in Bennett. It was very, very beautiful. I know Shirley's all about getting some. We didn't see him. No, we saw the clouds from there, and up here we saw him. So anyway, I can send them, right? So it's talking about starlight. The world is bent, dark, contorted. That's what Paul described it as, which means the conditions for us to shine have never been better than they are now. The darker the world, the crazier things get. That's a better condition for us to shine, because there's a contrast. The darker it gets, the lighter, the more easier it is to see the light. The brighter our light can shine. And we complain, we can sit around and we can get all bad-mouthing about the world's getting dark, this is happening, government's doing this, our president can't even stand up. He said, don't curse the darkness, turn on the light. Don't dwell on the darkness. It's easy to do that. It's easy to dwell on the darkness, but turn on the light. It's getting darker. Well, let the light shine brighter. And we know there's some things about light. Here's some other facts about light. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. Sunlight takes approximately 8 minutes to get here from the sun. From the sun to the earth, it's 8 minutes. So the sunlight that we feeling on our face, it left the sun 8 minutes ago, because it's 93 million miles away from the earth. So let the light that you enjoy now, let the sun and so we let the sun and we let the light in us shine on others. So light, in order to be effective, has to be seen. You can shine a light under a pillow, you know what I'm saying? In order for it to be effective, in order to be used, it has to be seen. And Paul says, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. For you and I to be effective, we have to be around people who are in darkness. For the light to be noticeable and for it to work. Well, Pastor, yeah, exactly. That's why I go to the casino and that's why I go to the bar, because that's where all the darkness is. I don't know, that argument doesn't work so well. We can get into that one a little bit further on, because it's usually not the one that goes to the casino or goes to the bar or goes to this venue or that. Oh, I'm just going to tell them about Jesus. After a week or two or a month or two, you're like, what happened to so-and-so that was witnessing, or whatever he used for an excuse? He didn't let the light shine. He didn't bring anybody from there. They trapped him or her. If all we do is shine among other people who are shining, we're not doing a lot of good. But we also have to let our light shine in this dark world, in this present darkness. Even going to church and getting others to listen to the Word of God is a great light, because there is so much darkness. Among whom ye shine as lights in the world. So we need to be, and we know that he said that we can live godly, we can live holy in this present evil world. He's like, sometimes you get the monk mentality or you want to go to the mountains and just let me go away. We'll start a commune. We'll just get a barge out in the middle of the ocean and all the Christians can be out there. We'll grab acreage out in the middle of nowhere. Don't mess with me. I won't mess with you. I'll just pray every day and, kumbaya and all that good stuff. Live like the Amish or whatever. But they're not fulfilling the call of God. He didn't say, he says, come out from among them and be separate, but that's in our light to where we're shining, to where they see that difference, the peculiarity. Jesus said, so let your light shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. There's no such a thing as secret discipleship. Undercover Christians. There's no such thing. One guy said underclothes Christians. That Christians wear underclothes. Yeah, that's a good thing. But some of you, it's starting to dawn on you. You're starting to get it. Anyway. Because the discipleship will destroy the secrecy, or the secrecy will destroy the discipleship. Because when you share and you declare and you let the whole world know, it breaks you out of that shell of quietness, secrecy, keeping it. I don't want anybody to know. I don't want to be if they know I'm a Christian, or you're like, you got to get to the other side of that, because that's just the devil. So light reveals what darkness hides. And there's something about turning on a light that's very revealing, or taking an object out into the sun and examining it for it's very different. You're in the inside light looking at clothes. What color is this? I'm terrible at that. You get outside and you're like, oh, that wasn't blue, that's black. Oh, that wasn't black, that's blue. That tie doesn't even match. And that's why I have a wife. And that's a wonderful thing. But you go outside, and we would do this a lot of times in matching colors. We were looking at building colors and all these different things. We take all the color chips out there. You'd look at it under the fluorescent lights, and you take it to this other room, and then you'd go outside and you look at it and you're like, oh, that's not even close, because that pure light, that sunlight, makes a difference. And so the bright light reveals what the darkness was hiding, which is why we need to be careful when we share our faith with unbelievers. We want to share the right thing. We want to walk in wisdom. Because when you share the truth, which is revealing, and people are living in darkness, hear those things, certain things in their life get exposed. You may think of it as just nothing. It's like, hey, I'm just sharing with you the truth. But to them, you're like punching them in the heart. You're like, whoa, that's too harsh. Somebody got mad at me the other morning because Sunday morning we just said too many harsh things. It was talking about sin and the pride of life and these different things. And you're like, oh, but when you shared that, it made me dwell on those things. You're like, well, then you must have something going on in there that needs to be rooted out. But when the truth is shown to us, when there's darkness in there, it hurts. And sometimes you wince when it hits right there where, you're like, that's smart, right? Okay. And we don't like that. But you don't have to be obnoxious about it. There's a wisdom. You have to be wise and well-doing. And sometimes people do need that straightforward talk. But you have to establish a relationship with them. I mean, I don't agree with the dude out there waving the sign around, you're all darn and going to hell, you're all darn and going to hell, you're all darn and going to, all this. And it may affect somebody, but many times it just gives the whole rest of the world an excuse. Look at these crazy weirdos. You give love a bad name, right? So there's wisdom in well-doing. So what kind of a light do we shine? We don't have to shine the spotlight and, hey, you tell them you're on your way to hell. But there's times when you pray, you talk with them, and you're being straightforward. Many times that type of comment is to one that's known the truth, that's had the light. You're like, hey, you know better than that. But I'm coming to you in love. I'm not coming to you in judgment. You can be warm and loving, deferential, and kind. And at the same time, just speaking the truth will be enough to convict people who don't want to budge from their darkness. And so the truth is very powerful. And that's why people say, why'd you preach? You can be in services, you're like, why are you preaching about my cigarettes all the time? And you think back, I probably haven't preached about cigarettes since I've been here. And I'm not saying that's what happened, but when there's something on the inside and you can come to it, if you already got it in your mind and you come to a church service, the preacher might not even say anything about your little pet sin, but the Holy Ghost is in there pounding on it if truth is being preached. And so, keep on keeping on. We've got a few minutes here. And at the same time, we have to speak the truth. Jesus said it this way, 3:19, John 3:19. And he said, and this is the condemnation, that light is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest or known, that they are wrought in God. The light shows the people the way out of darkness. It doesn't just expose the darkness. And so it leads us out of darkness. And so it's really helpful when it leads or directs somebody to the truth. Jesus said, I'm the light of the world. And in that, he turned to the disciples and said, you are the light of the world. He said, I am the light of the world. Then he turns to us and says, you are the light of the world. So we're getting right down where we want to be at. So as the sun, so think of it as the sun and the moon. The moon reflects the sun, right? The moon reflects the sun. It shouldn't obscure the sun. It should reflect the sun. So as long as I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. Ye are the light of the world, but don't block God's light. Don't eclipse it. Don't try to make yourself bigger than you ought, but reflect Christ in you. And so the question is, how do we do that? We have to get close to the one who's shining. How do we reflect the sun? We got to be in the right angle, right? We got to be receiving the light. We've got to get the light in us. And so in order to do that, you've got to be in that right place at the right time. It's similar to glow in the dark paint. Anybody, we added on that, we sprayed that foam deal out there, but there's other ones that'll do better than that. It's kind of similar to that. It has phosphor embedded in the paint. And the phosphor reacts to a light source. So you hold it up to the light, like the sun or a light bulb, and it charges that paint, right? And that's what they call that, when that charge is in there, there's a charge that takes place. The phosphor gets excited by the light source, the molecules in there, and then it continues to shine. What they call that brightness or the charge that's in there, they call that persistence. It's called persistence. The charge that goes in that fluorescent paint is called persistence. Now, the persistence of the object that is glowing is directly relational to the radiance at the source and the thickness of the paint. So the longer or more intense the source, the more persistence it's going to have. So for us to shine, let His light shine us, and we have to be ready to receive, ready to recharge, ready to be persistent. That gives us more persistence. When we're in church all the time, when we're reading the Word all the time, when we're praying all the time, to where we can be more persistent to do what we need to do in our life and be more persistent in how we deal with others. But when we're off and every other direction and every other tangent, and when our focus is in how can we be persistent? How can we be shining? Just like Moses came down the mountain, he was up there with the Lord. His face shone so much, they're like, oh, we can't even look at you. It's so bright, because he was in the presence of the very source of the holiness. And so the more we spend in the presence of God, that is a testimony. They knew he had been with Jesus. Be in fellowship with him, be close to him, getting all of that warmth and that glow. Then our persistence will have more of an impact. And the last part here, do all things without murmurings and disputings, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. Blameless and harmless. Our light is to be attractive, not attacking. To phrase this a different way, there are a couple of things that affect how effective we are. Our attitude and our actions work on how effective we are. So we need to have the right attitude. So he said that right attitude is without murmuring or without complaining, right? And without disputings. You need to have the right attitude and the right action. I believe that's on your paper right there. Holding fast the word of life. So he's saying the right action, the right attitude, but in this he's saying do all things. All things actually means all things. Yeah, it actually means all things. It doesn't mean just some things, it means all things. There's no word in the Greek that changes it and says, oh, it actually means this. It means all things. Just like in Romans 8:28 says, we know that all things work together for good. And so, do you know what it means? We know what it means to complain, right? Yeah, we do. And the word here for murmurings or complaining literally means to mutter in a low voice or low tone or an undertone. The word means under your breath, the murmuring side of it. Like grumbling, I don't know about all, get the bad attitude. You're just ticked off about something and you've just got a bad attitude. That's a bad attitude. So we're talking about having the right attitude and our right action. And so we look at the context. You're shining as a light in a crooked world. The world is watching you. How attractive is a Christian who does this all the time? Grumble, 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 mumble, 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 murmur, murmur, murmur. Is that very effective at winning anybody? We know it's not. Complaining, grumbling, disputing. Believer is not going to bring people out of the darkness. So to be a complaining believer is bad advertising for the kingdom. I'm a Christian, I love the Lord, I've got Facebook posts, but every time you talk to me, I'm going to complain about something. And so, why would an unbeliever listen to you grumble and complain? What do you want? What are you doing? How are you compelling them to follow Christ? And so, it's all about our advertising, and we're advertising the grumbling side of things. So, the part of the attitude is to shine or not to shine. That is the question. The more you complain, the less you shine. And so we go to the next word. You have murmuring and disputing. It's a different word. Disputing is when you take it from under your breath and it becomes dialogue. So you're mumbling, you got the ugly, that part. But then you go to the other part and it goes into disputing. You start bringing it out and airing all your issues, and you got an issue with this and got an issue with that, and why does this happen this way? And you always got issues about this, that, and the other thing. What's wrong with everything? You're telling everybody what's wrong with everything. That's when it comes into the disputing part of it. So we have the attitude and the action. Part of that action also is verse 16, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. Holding forth the word of life. What I have written down, I don't know if I have it on your paper, get a grip. Get a grip. Hold on to the word of God. Hold on to the gospel. Hold on to the truth. Get a firm grip on the message. Because if you have a grip on the message, if you know the truth, if you're not fast, unmovable, always abounding in the love of God, because you're not wishy-washy, you're not double-minded. Right. you're going forth with the real message. So knowing it, not just knowing it, but showing it, sharing it, speaking it, evangelizing with it. And so we exemplify with our life what must be amplified, or what we amplified by our lips. So our actions and our words go hand in hand. Sing it, shout it, tell all about it. And the last point is be all that you can be. That's more than an army phrase, right? Yea, and if I be offered or poured out upon the sacrifice and service of your faith, I joy and rejoice with you all. For the same cause also do ye joy and rejoice with me. And so Paul's saying, I'm being offered or poured out as a drink offering. That's the picture that he's kind of portraying with them or to them. In the Old Testament, it was called a drink offering. There was a drink offering that was poured out. And Paul's seeing his life that way. He's in jail. He's suffering. He's going through the whatever jail entails. And I may not even make it out of here alive, but he's saying, my life is poured out before the Lord. It's not my own, it's for the Lord. And so I'm ready. 2 Timothy, he wrote one of his last things that he wrote. He said, I'm now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. Offered, there it says spendo, to pour out as a libation. I'm ready to be poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my death is at hand. But really, that whole part of what he's speaking about in that verse, and I believe I put few words in there, it's about the word liturgia or liturgy or a ceremony or a worship. He's saying my pouring out of my life, what that's happening in the church of Philippi, all of it tied together is a worship unto God. And so when we look at what we're doing and how we're letting our light shine, and we understand it as a worship to God rather than a duty to God, then it becomes an inspiration to just continue to do it. It's not, I got to do this, and I got to let my light shine, I got to shine it this way and shine it, do all the. It's not mechanical, it's as a worship to the Lord. And so it's a joy. It's a joy. And when we lose that joy, you see people when they lose that joy, or they're not doing it out of joy, they're doing it out of obligation. I'm not saying that every time that you, happy, joy, and I'm just joyful that I get to do this, and I get to do this, I get to clean this toilet, or I get to haul this out, or take the trash out. It's not always a pull all the weeds in the parking lot. It's not always a joy. I was like, I wish somebody else would help with this. It's so, but it's if you're doing it as a worship to the Lord, you realize that God sees my heart. God knows why I'm doing it. I'm not just, it's not always out of obligation. Sometimes you feel like it is, but when you have that attitude of worship in whatever you're doing, it gives you the right outlook and the right uplook. And God helps us. It's like, oh no, I'm going to be there for my brothers and sisters. I'm going to be there for my family. They may not be there, but I'm going to be there. They have to answer to God. I'm going to answer for me. They can answer for them. I'm going to encourage them, shine my light on them. Why weren't you there? What took you so long? Well, if you would have been there, it wouldn't have took so long. Right? So there are some questions on there, and they're pretty pertinent questions. I hope you looked at them. I didn't bring them up. But you can take the Bible study home with you. In each one of those sections, there are questions. And at the end, there's some questions there. Personal things that, if you get real with them, they'll change you. But if you just leave them there on the paper and you don't look at them and you put it in your Bible and you open it up next week when you get back here, they won't do anything for you. But if you open it up tomorrow or the next day while you're doing your Bible reading and you try to answer some of those between you and the Lord and pray about them, they'll change you. It'll have the Bible study will have a greater impact. So with that, let's dismiss in prayer. Reverend Chavez, will you pray, please?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the teaching tonight. God, for the instructions on how to live for you. And not just to ourselves, but to the world. Letting everybody know that Christ is real and lives within us every day. I pray that each one goes, God, carries these things in their heart, prays, meditates over them. And God, will continue to give you the glory in all things.